good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special session titled Having an Ear to the Ground, Listening to Stories from the Community. My name is Deborah Chan, and I am the co-founder of Wiki Impact, an online platform dedicated to the impact industry. We share stories and data on social and environmental issues that matter, highlighting impact-driven organizations and change makers on the ground. So we know that authentic relationships and connections are important if we want to create lasting and meaningful impact. Connections with funders, contributors, supporters, thought leaders, potential talent, and most importantly, connections with the community that we work with and serve. And that is the very reason why we are having this conversation here this afternoon, so that we can all learn and hear from those who are charting the path of sustainable development and to understand the critical role that CSOs play. I will be your moderator for this session, and it gives me great pleasure to be speaking with some of the most creative, credible, and compassionate change makers in the impact space. At the start of this 90-minute session, each panelist will share briefly the cause they are championing and the initiatives that they have taken on board. Their stories will include lessons learned and the nuances of working with various native communities and the innovative interventions that they have worked, for them throughout the years. After the presentation, we will have an open conversation on how they have overcome various challenges, established working partnerships with the government, and navigated opportunities to scale and allocate resources. So if you're tuning in, please join me in this conversation, because we're going to have a good and casual one by commenting or asking any questions to the panelists in the chat box on your right. If there is a specific question that you want to direct to any of the speakers, please include their names at the end of the question. And so we hope to cover as many questions as time allows before the end of this 90 minutes. So let's get right into it as I introduce you to my esteemed panelists. We will start off with Con, and just a brief background about Con. Con Onsen is the Managing Director of Yayasan Kajian dan Pembangunan Masyarakat, covering poverty alleviation and community development programs among the Orang Asli and the urban poor. Since 2015, he has focused on developing a shared prosperity community enterprise in natural farming to empower the Orang Asli in sustainable livelihood and environment. Con also sits on a number of working communities, such as Suhakam for the Orang Asli development and the OA microgrant facility under MOF and UNDP. He is also a Malaysian representative of the Asian Solidarity Economy Council and the Intercontinental Network for the promotion of social solidarity economy that promotes fair and just businesses. Con is also a member of the CSO SDG Alliance, a civil society partnership with EPO. Next, we have Sasibai Kimis. Sasibai left a very successful career in the finance industry to start the award-winning Malaysian conscious lifestyle brand and social enterprise, Heir. Heir's story began with a desire to create thoughtfully designed contemporary heritage pieces handcrafted by master artisans in Malaysia. Heir is Fair Trade certified by the World Fair Trade Organization and works with disappearing heritage art forms handicrafted by women, refugees, and indigenous persons. Heir won the British Council and Arthur Guinness Project Social Enterprise Award in 2015, and Sasibai was one of the Wharton's 40 Under 40 award winners in 2015, and an Eisenhower Fellow in the 2015 Women's Leadership Program. She was also recently awarded the Tadler Hero Award in 2020. Congratulations, Sasibai. Next, we have another lady on the panel, and she happens to be in East Malaysia, Kuching to be specific at this moment. She is the co-founder of Tanoti Craft. Jacky holds a Bachelor of Law from the University of Bristol and a Master's of Finance from RMIT University. Prior to her venture into social impact causes with Tanoti, she spent 14 years in investment banking at CIMB Investment Bank, where she had been based in Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, and East Malaysia throughout different periods. She co-founded Tanoti in 2012 to assume a small workshop of songket weavers, which was about to disband when funding was discontinued. From a 13-person weaving atelier 9 years ago, Tanoti today is transformed into a community leader for rural and remote artisans in Sarawak, engaging directly with over 400 producers of crafts and food, providing them income for their work and helping them to elevate their livelihoods. So in June 2021, she was appointed President of Society Atelier Sarawak, where she and her committee intend to build capacities of Sarawakian artisans so that they can generate wealth and contribute positively to the economy. Jacky firmly believes that every person wishes to build a better life for themselves. Through her work, she intends to facilitate the process and help to manifest their dreams. Finally, last but not least, we have Rashvin Singh. Rashvin is the Group CEO of Biji-Biji Initiative, which is one of Malaysia's pioneering and award-winning social enterprises that champions sustainability. Biji-Biji Initiative comprises subsidiaries across a few industries in ethical fashion, circular economy solutions, and their latest venture, Me.reka, with a dot after the ME, which is an innovative and alternative education model designed to build 21st century talents. In 2018, Me.reka completed its equity crowdfunding round to raise 1.6 million from 121 unique investors through Pitch-In. Me.reka operates a 12,000 square feet makerspace in Publica, Kuala Lumpur, and another with Taylor's University called Taylor's Me.reka Makerspace. Rashvin plays a regular role in global programs and speaking engagements, and he was a panel speaker at the Social Enterprise World Forum 2019 in Addis Ababa, and was selected as an Obama leader in the Asia Pacific inaugural cohort. So join me today in a conversation with the amazing panelists, and let's get the story started. I'll pass this time to On, who will help us start this session by giving us a short presentation. Over to you, On.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Salam sejahtera and good afternoon to all. I am privileged to share this platform with a dynamic and highly talented co-panelist. I'm also excited to share some insights regarding the Orang Asli, especially their potential to be one of the best partners to mitigate climate crisis. Excited because I know many of you hearing this can make a world of difference for the Orang Asli and empower them to fight climate change and make a difference to our world. Throughout my 25 years of working with the Orang Asli, I hear many say, the Orang Asli are lazy. It's no point helping them. After getting their pay, they stop work and disappear into the forest. It's impossible to help them progress. My name is Onsen. I'm a director with Yayasan Kajian, Pembangunan, Masyarakat, or YKPM in short. Over the last 5 years, we have been pioneering a one-of-a-kind, bottoms-up community farm in Tasik Chini with the Jacqueline people. YKPM had set up OA Organic as a fair trade enterprise to uplift the Orang Asli from poverty and to build sustainable livelihoods. Let me begin with a video to show how we are building a modest model that puts people back in the center of development. Please enjoy this 2-minute video to help understand what we do. OA Organic is one-of-a-kind Orang Asli shared prosperity farm. Through setting up a collective farm enterprise that shaped the model of shared wealth, people are put before profits, and those left behind share fairly in the enterprise. OA Organic has built fair markets and a bottom-up economy, uplifting the Orang Asli from poverty, unifying and strengthening community action and leadership. In this process, the Orang Asli have been mobilized to sustain their forests, restore their creator-given role and identity to sustain the environment, combat climate change, and create wealth for the nation. In short, OA Organic has created a pathway of hope humanizing profit-making, putting people and planet in the center of businesses.
Ada perubahan lah dalam kita punya hidup dan kita ada contoh kenderaan pun kita dah dapat beli satu motosikal lah.
Rumah saya yang buruk tu nak ubah menjadi boleh besar sikit lah. Boleh anak selesa main dalam rumah tu.
Memberi kata orang pun kelengkapan pada anak-anak, terutamanya nak menyediakan peralatan sekolah dia orang. Kita tak payah susah macam dulu. Kalau dulu memang sangat stres lah saya fikir sebab kita hanya bergantung pada getah yang tak luas kan, tak cukup.
Masa dulu nak pakai baju pun susah. Kena pakai baju koyak-koyak. Sekarang ni semenjak tanam sayur ni ada duit sikit, bolehlah anak saya bertukar soal baju. Lepas tu duit pun macam adalah simpan sikit-sikit.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that video and gave you a better idea of what we do. The development approach is really about restoring dignity of the orang asli. In particular, it is restoring this dignity in 3 ways. First, YKPM created a fair market in partnership with the private sector. We set up a shared prosperity and fair trade enterprise, and it's about putting people in the center of the business rather than profit before people. Through this bottoms-up enterprise, the orang asli own their own farms and are regarded as partners in wealth creation. They share also in the profits and earn 40% of the retail price instead of their customary 15%. For example, people would come and buy their cempedak at 1 ringgit and then sell it at 8 ringgit in the supermarkets. And so as a result of improving their incomes and fair markets, they have been able to double and even some triple their incomes. This has enabled them to buy food and school uniform for their children, extend their houses, and even expand their own farms. And often one of the early purchases, which I see with their surplus income, is our washing machines. Secondly, this approach recognizes the distinctive culture of the orang asli. They are people of the forest, not just village or kampong people. They are not fulfilled just by having a house and a piece of land. The forest is part of them, or rather, in their worldview, they believe they are part of the forest. And there's this deep connection between them and the forest. It's the place where they were brought up, educated by their parents on forest survival and caring for the environment. It is their playground, a place where they find the materials to make toys and build their houses. A place where they have fun, picnics and adventures together as a community. A place of happy memories, romance and death. Now, I don't mean that romance leads to death. Sometimes this may be true, as those married long enough can attest. But what I actually mean is that eventually all will die and they will be buried in the forest and become sacred sites. So, without the forest, the identity of the people disappears. The community is bound to get together and exist because of this shared identity and dependency with the forest. And without the forest, their distinctive culture will cease to exist and our identity will fade and be lost. Finally, this model recognizes the orang asli as the best guardians of the forest, and the enterprise being developed leverages on their expertise to protect the forest and build a green economy. This agroforestry livelihood strategy enables them to conserve their land and their forests. And already some of them are earning 2,000 ringgit and some even more as a result of this intervention. And we hope to grow it even further. In summary, the model affirms their dignity and culture. It enables them to share in the profits from the supply chain in an equitable nature. Their expertise in nature economics is harnessed to build a green economy that combats climate change. And in all, it strengthens their community cohesiveness, culture, and biodiversity. This is a way in which they can protect their sacred identity from being lost in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Deborah.
Thank you, Onsen. I think it was so wonderful for you to start us off with that video where we could really hear the voices and the stories of the, Orang Aslis themselves. And more importantly, I think it's a reminder for all of us listening in and on this session as well that, there is a deep connection with the communities that we're working with, a deep connection with them and the environments that they depend on, right? It's often quite easy for us to forget about it because we're kind of creating solutions in our concrete jungles, but it takes so much effort for us to kind of like be on the ground and listen to what the communities actually need so that we can then create solutions that actually work for them, a community-led solution base. Good stuff. We're moving on to Sasibai, the queen and the founder of Earth Heir. Would you please give us a story or two about Earth Heir and the lessons that you have learned? Over to you, Sasi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sasi, and I founded Earth Heir in 2013. So it's actually nice to see that quite a lot of the social enterprise pioneers in Malaysia are in this panel, actually. So I just want to share very quickly about what we do at Earth Heir. Our vision at Earth Heir is about really helping people understand our name, basically. The fact that all of us are heirs of this earth. We have an inheritance. Our inheritance is basically this earth, and we have a responsibility to care for it. So Earth Heir actually started with my own personal journey. I have a background in finance, but I came to a point in my life where I felt like I wanted to do something that I felt was going to be very impactful. Not that finance cannot be impactful, but I wanted to be able to combine my passion for finance and business together with helping communities that I had seen traveling around the world and that were in need. So my journey actually started in Cambodia. And that's when I saw like a lot of weavers were struggling to make an income. And I noticed that, like what Onsen said, the middlemen actually ended up making most of the money. And the actual weavers and the artisans in the villages didn't make much. So I actually just started buying from them and selling it on, and didn't actually plan to start a business, but it ended up becoming a business. Because I realized that if you really want to make an impact, you have to have sustainable form of income to be able to continue helping the communities that you work with. So at Earth Heir, I focused very much on trying to address these challenges. And I saw that, the artisan community actually has huge potential to impact communities with low incomes around the world. And in fact, what Onsen is doing is the number one opportunity is agriculture. And then the second largest opportunity is actually the artisan sector. So, in line with this, I really felt that, we could build a business that works with helping communities, reduce poverty, and at the same time, preserves our culture and heritage. I mean, as a Malaysian growing up in urban city centers, I was very much ignorant about our own heritage. I'm embarrassed to say that my knowledge of our heritage was pretty much just batik and songket, and I really didn't think we had anything else. And it was only when I started Earth Heir and I started traveling within Malaysia and meeting artisan communities all over Malaysia that, I realized there is a great need here. There are a lot of artisans who've been making products that haven't changed in the last 20 to 30 years. They need design help. They need market access help. And because we are a social enterprise, I suppose social enterprises are ethical intermediaries. And that's where I feel we can all add value, and that's where we are trying to add value. So it's kind of like we're in between communities and the markets, and trying to help them connect in a way where communities are respected, given opportunity, treated well, and not exploited. So Eartha, in early 2020, just before the pandemic, we launched our a boutique when we got our fair trade certification. And this was very has been very helpful for us, because one of the key questions that we always get asked is, how are the artisans being treated, in your products? How are the artisans earning an income by you working with them? So, having fair trade certification helped us tremendously in giving consumers confidence in buying from us, that we satisfy the 10 fair trade principles. So what we do as an organization is we actually spend a huge amount of our time in education and training. So we train our artisans in design, in production, in pricing, and how to deal with customers. So the aim here is, one day I hope Earth Air doesn't exist. Because my dream is that all the artisans that we work with will have the skills that we would have been able to help them with, the skills that they would need to be independent and be able to work with consumers and customers and clients directly, rather than having us assist them. So, and I also recognize that design is very important in developing a brand. So in the last 8 years, that's some of the key elements that we've really worked on, is creating a strong brand with credible values that people can trust, and focusing on the design and quality of the products before the cause and the story of the products. I felt that has always been very important, because people are not going to buy for charity reasons more than once. But if you give people a very good service and a very good product, they will keep buying from you. We also do a lot of speaking and awareness, because I'm a very passionate advocate of ethical fashion, sustainability, and the social enterprise business model itself. I really believe that companies really need to move towards a new way of doing business. And social enterprises are one of the key models of how that can be done well, and how companies can incorporate more social impact and social purpose into their supply chains and their business models. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sasi. I love it that you started, really with your own personal story. And I think, many CSOs or even social enterprises, they, the founders or the co-founders would have had an aha moment before they kick-started in their journey of wanting to do something. And I love it that you shared so openly that, you really didn't think that it was going to be a business, but then it snowballed into, something that is just really beyond your circle right now. What I'm hearing from you is really just tapping into the community and realizing that there are unique talents and skills to be harnessed from the communities that we're working with. And more importantly, I think the products that Earth Air, has to offer, what it does is it really raises the dignity of those who are making it as well. And in some sense, that is part of legacy creation and also your sustainability journey. So wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to hear from another lady as well. And she is based all the way in Kuching. Jacky, I'll pass this time to you. Please tell us the story of Tanoti Crafts.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this channel and tuning into the conference. Today, actually, I would like to present my report card of our relationships with the community and what we have done or what we are doing right now. So a little bit of a chronology. In 2012, I was happily working in the bank, and then decided that I would equity fund a songket weaving workshop of 13 artisans. In 2014, we started working with artisans in the very, very interiors of Sarawak, along Ramai. And we found that relationship very interesting. We created a lot of value to their lives with the work that we've done with them. And so we decided we'd venture further. 2016, we decided that we would collaborate with WWF Malaysia, and then we developed more Penang settlements in the northern part of Sarawak, which is the Kubaan Puak area. 2018, we continued our work more towards the central of Sarawak. And then in 2020, which was last year, as part of our Magic Push program, we had sufficient funding to go further into the interiors. So now, today, we are working with artisans. Sorry. I think the slides are... So today now we are working with artisans that are producing more than 10 types of craft with different types of fibers. And as at now, we have 482 registered with us, entirely ethnic craft as well as ancestral techniques. This is how our artisans live. So the typical working landscape is like this. This is how we access the artisans on roads that look like this. And they live in villages that look like that. As you know, as remote artisans or remote villages are, there's always a very lush jungle around them where they would be tapping their fibers. This is how their children play. And these are the tools that they work with. So these are the products that we have come up with the artisans. We have also invited artisans to perform their craft, and we have also invited artisans to provide service for their craft in terms of tourism and homestays. We love to diversify the income of our artisans by using their craft as their focus. Recently, as a result of COVID, we ventured into foods, and we tapped food producers, really new food producers. Some of them, became producers as a result of COVID. And we were very keen to allow the bountiful harvest of Sarawak to be told to the world or to be exposed to the world. These are the products that we have come out with. So all our products do have sources, they have provenance, and they have stories to be told of the people making them and of the land supplying them. Also, as a result of COVID, we decided to crowdsource the sewing of PPE items. Up till now, we have produced 117,000 pieces of PPE to front lines as a result of COVID. With the same sewists, the sewists that we have sourced are basically generally artisans who were not activated during COVID, home sewists, and even the prison department of Kuching. So we went into the sewing workshop of the prison, but we couldn't take photos, so we took photos with the guards. And there, thank you very much. So basically, this is a report card of what we have been doing with the communities around us in Sarawak. Thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, if those of you who are listening, East Malaysia has a myriad of cultures and traditions and different communities that, many Malaysians don't really know about. And so, I would urge you, make a trip now that, the borders are slowly opening up, make a trip to East Malaysia, whether it is Sabah or Sarawak, and get to know the communities in the other side of Malaysia. I love it, Jacky, that you shared so vividly and also quite inspiring to hear that your organization actually pivoted, as a result of COVID. And I suppose not only CSOs or, SEs or I think businesses in general would have had to pivot over the period of the pandemic. And what you have done is basically just tapped into the opportunities at hand. And it is a testament of how, you've kept a pulse on the communities that you're working with, but also a pulse on kind of the market demands that are out there as well. So well done to Tanoti. I'll pass this time now to Rashvin, who is obviously, the last, but obviously not the least, because he's got a spectrum of various services and small businesses under his belt. And I'll leave this time and give it to Rashvin so that he can tell you a little bit more about what he's doing. Over to you, Rash.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. I'm Rashvin. Selamat petang, selamat tengah hari. It's very interesting. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing, for opening the floor. It was great to hear from Onsen. And I just realized that actually Sasi, Jacqueline, and myself all actually had some finance background in the beginning, in the past. And we all started around 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014. So there must have been something in the air or the water around that time. We should have a look what happened around there. So yes, I'm Rashvin Singh from Biji-Biji and Me.reka. And let me just jump into this right away. So what we do is, in a nutshell, in the big picture, Biji-Biji champions sustainability through circular economy products and programs. Me.reka is based on education work, access to skills and tools and technology, focusing on digital skills, right? So at Biji-Biji, there's the Biji-Biji team. We've got a program called Beyond Bins. We've got a smaller team called Biji-Biji Ethical Fashion. And we look up to our comrades, Sasi and Tanoti, as like our big sisters in this space. At Me.reka, we've got a space in Publica. We run online programs, virtual programs, and we also have a partnership with Taylor's University, where we operate with them in makerspace, working with the students in that area, and also the communities, PPR Lembah Subang, which is just right next to the university. Now, if I just go a little bit deeper on how the Circular Solutions Program works. So this is under Biji-Biji. Juliana, the CEO of Biji-Biji, actually leads this with her team. And what happens is, it's capturing the value of type 2 and type 5 of plastics through the implementation of small-scale plastic recycling solutions, right? So we have a program with YH and this, with Ivy, and what happens is we implement the machines at the localities. We train the communities on how they could source for these materials, how they could recycle them. With the machine, they are able to increase the value of the plastic materials because it's shredded, and the shredded material actually has about 30% higher plastic recycling value because it's easier to transport and it's already one step of the process. And then there's two parts where we support the community. On one side, they are actually empowered to go and find their own suppliers. Right? So we've seen some amazing stuff where they go partner with mechanic shops, with the gerai-gerai and all that to get plastic input, and they can sell it to their own recyclers. So they learn a bit about negotiating and how to get better value income from the plastic waste. Alternatively, we also help them source for corporate orders. So we work with our 3D modelers at Me.reka who come up with molds and designs, and then we sell this in larger orders. So that's at the Biji-Biji side, and in big picture. At Me.reka, just to share, right? So why we did Me.reka, right? Was very interesting. When we were at Biji-Biji, one of the biggest issues we had was access to tools and machinery. It was so difficult, right? We wanted to make bags. We wanted to do like art installations from waste products, create furniture, and we had no place to access these machines. So we would drive to like Cheras to borrow Gurpreet's uncle's sewing machine on Saturday afternoons between 4 to 10 p.m., go to Singapore and Klang Williams, like brothers workshop to use the welding machines. And we were like, this is a bit gila, this is a bit crazy, right? Because how do you empower, and this is urban KL. So I imagine it must be even harder if you want to prototype or make things to create new products or services. So then our friends who had been overseas were like, hey, you know what, Rash? Actually, there's this thing called makerspaces, right? And makerspaces exist actually from MIT Fab Lab about 12 years ago. And it was really an idea of a sharing economy concept. So then we're like, okay, let's do this, right? Because this would be fantastic. So we did this in KL. It was first in our house. And then we worked with Sunrise to set up in Publica. So Me.reka is a makerspace. It has a makerspace with all these different labs. And we also run our programs virtually beyond Me.reka. So one of the main programs we run now is a digital entrepreneur program. It tackles both. So you could be a urban normal M40 T20 kit, and there's a paying price for it. It's about 1,500 ringgit. Or we also get funding. We provide our own scholarships for students from B40 communities, or we get certain funders to sponsor them. And as of today, we've got about 300 plus graduates. 77% of them secure at least one gig work within a month of completing the program. And on average, so this is data from only about half of the students who reply us after 3 months. 700 of them increase their income on average. Increase of 700 ringgit of income on average. Now, so we've shared about what we do, right? But honestly, if you ask me, in social entrepreneurship, the how and the why is really what drives us, right? All of us in this room and all of us in this forum. So for us, we really wear the lens of this is how we are structured to think, right? In Biji-Biji and Me.reka. How can we create systems change through unlocking capital, right? So on one side, we've got various forms of capital, right, in the world. So you've got technological capital. These are like access to platform technology, blockchain technology. This kind of tech can create trust. It can create bridges between communities. It eases the access to things. So how do we use that? I do personally look at how we can unlock financial capital. I think anybody in this room will tell you that the world doesn't lack money. There's plenty of money in the world. It's just how this money is being channeled. And I love seeing financial talent helping to create papers, documents, impact, reports and financial papers that can draw down these funds to channel to the most served or underserved communities, right? Now, national capital is a big thing. What Onsen spoke about earlier is how do we protect the environment, the ecosystems, how we look at this, because the whole is larger than the sum of the parts, right? So you want to preserve these ecosystems. I'm personally also very passionate about human capital. This is really the biggest issue in the scene as well. A lot of us cannot afford the right talent. How do we work with retirees? How do we work with universities? How do we tap into academic talent to support our SE work, to do research, right, that can channel back into policy work? And lastly, of course, there's a lot of underutilized buildings, machineries. Imagine all the universities and the machines over there that are not being used on weekends. What could we do with that? So this is really where we come from and where we like to think about things. And ultimately, when we do all of this, the only way to hold ourselves accountable is really through having your own set of principles, your own set of theories, right, that you apply, rules that you apply to. And in that case, really, it's having your own governance framework and impact reports. So I love how Jacky started about her report card. That's fantastic. We'll give you some scores after this, Jacqueline. We think you're doing very well. No worries. But yeah, even on that, so for us, we measure the people we benefit, the impact we create, but also internally, right? Like pay gap. So what is the pay gap between the top earner and the bottom earner in Biji-Biji and Me.reka? How do we capture that? What is the pay gap between male and female in the same decision-making position? So we report these things transparently. We're not saying we're the best at it. All we say that as long as we report it, we have a chance of improving it. So that's all for me. And I look forward to the session after this.
Fantastic. Raj, what you just shared is really, seeing a need and then meeting a need. I love that, you've just totally innovated in terms of your solutions. We talk about also, a little bit about how we need to capture talent and the part about social capital. There's a talk about brain drain and people wanting to leave the country for greener pastures, but really what we really need is to be able to tap into talent from all kinds of industries. You mentioned earlier how Jacky, Sasi, and you all have kind of a thread, in the finance world, and how you came together, and now you're kind of leading your own initiatives as well. And so I think everybody has a space and a part to play in creating social change. We are going into an open discussion, and I would urge whoever that is listening in now to still fill in the, if you have any questions, direct it to specific speakers. If it is to specific speakers, continue to let us know what your questions are, and we'll try to address them. I do have some questions here which I would like to kind of bring forward. You know, in sustainable development, there's often a gap between well-intentioned policies and implementation at the community level. So this is where CSOs play a very critical role. How has your organization been helpful in kind of addressing some of these structural gaps connected to social issues that you see on the ground, whether it is, you know, policy recommendations or bridging the gap for government initiatives? If I could probably direct that question to Jacqueline first, maybe you would have some stories to tell, and then for the rest of the speakers, please feel free to jump in and tell your stories too.
Sorry, Deborah, if you don't mind, can you repeat your question?
No worries, Jacky. I think, Jacky, the question is, has your organization been helpful in addressing some of the structural gaps connected to the social issues that we're facing here in the nation, whether it is in terms of policy recommendations or, you know, being the bridge between the government and the communities that you're working with?
Actually, what we do is very intuitive. You know, we react to situations and then we will act on them, right? And along the way, we found out that stakeholders are very compassionate and empathetic, and they will institute policies that allow us to mobilize. And you know, we're very grateful for that. And you know, as we progress together, we do feedback to stakeholders, and then stakeholders will then, obviously, you know, we've got the ears on the ground, and we are doing work with the people that we want to serve. So yes, I think, you know, somebody needs to take the first step, and it's usually people from the ground who takes the first step, and then. At the same time, policymakers will observe and also react to a situation. You know, COVID was very interesting. Nobody had time to do very much, you know, in the first lockdown, but we all stepped up. You know, policymakers stepped out and CSOs stepped up. So it's a very good relationship, I think, that happened.
Absolutely. Sasi, Rash, and would you have any kind of like, you know, experiences or even stories to tell where, you know, you've played a role kind of being that bridge that I just mentioned just now?
Deborah, may I step in here?
Go ahead.
You know, I think when we look at policy development strategies, the starting point is 1957 onwards. But I think the problem is it fails to understand what had happened behind that timeline. And so after 50 years of state intervention and millions being poured through these development budgets and programs to uplift the Orang Asli from poverty, there today remains almost 90% of the Orang Asli that still fall below the poverty line index. And some people say the Orang Asli are lazy, and they are anti-development. However, to unpack this, we need to look at the history beneath this felt perception. The Orang Asli resistance is actually a pushback against the top-down imposed development program that destroyed their forests and continues to threaten their culture. During the few years leading to the formation of Malaya, the Orang Asli had a satisfactory legal system of land rights, and the forest provided for everything that they had. The government of the day created new laws like the Aboriginal Act and the National Land Code, which effectively took away their land rights. As a result of this, their forests were logged, and the Orang Asli relocated into monocrop housing schemes. Now imagine this scenario. If tomorrow a new government comes into power and they suddenly change the ownership laws, the land ownership laws, and forfeited our houses. They then relocate us into low-cost flats, and in their benevolence, provide training and microfinance for us to start a new life with food stalls like burgers, nasi lemak, or chapati. They also provide sewing machines and equipment for the women to start beauty centers. And ironically, this new government expects us to be grateful for their perceived magnanimous charity to help us adapt to their new development program. And this is not unlike the scenario faced by the Orang Asli in taking away their land, logging their forests, and enforced resettlement, making them poor and dependent on our way of life. I think there's a need to revisit these policies and this inherited development schizophrenia policy, which appears charitable, but it overlooks history, the values and grievances of the Orang Asli towards the unjust destruction of their land rights and way of life. And may I suggest we relook at our development policies and move from charity to social justice. Admittedly, it will hurt, but justice is the right way to go, and it does not come cheap. It's not just the Orang lives that are at stake here, but also our shared forest and planet.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, as you were just sharing those stories, I'm reminded of stories that I hear of concrete houses being built for the Orang Aslis, and and having them forcing them to live in it. And what happens after that is, a few months down the road, a really nice concrete house is built, but they don't end up staying there. They rather be in the forest and be in nature where they feel most themselves and most connected to the resources that they are dependent on. But more importantly, I think it's not just about the dependency, but it's about an identity issue, isn't it? And I'm sure all of you would kind of agree with that thing, with the identity crisis when it comes to community development work. So we know that the beauty when it comes to working with communities, it is essentially they are people and not problems to be solved. They're not issues to be solved. And all communities are unique, as we have heard from all of you. And the interventions that you provide for each communities are really not cookie cutter in nature, because you have to continue to innovate and just keep your ears kind of peeled towards what are the real needs. I would like to kind of ask as well, now that you have had some experience, all four of you, working and speaking with communities, could you share with us some of the common factors or mindsets among the communities that you work with that have contributed to the success and sustainability of your projects and initiatives? And I think we could definitely glean from the lessons learned. If you could just, peel open the layers and tell us what you have learned over the years of working with communities. So I'm going to direct this question maybe to Sasi first.
Sure, thanks, Deborah. I think for me, working with communities, one thing that I've really noticed is a strong pride and dignity in what they do, in the sense that though people think that a lot of when you're working with OA communities, refugee communities, even differently abled artisans, or even women in prisons, you would think that they would prefer charity, but in fact, most of the artisans we've worked with don't. Even when we have offered, during COVID, it was a different thing. During COVID, they all accepted help, as in charity in terms of food or access to medical care, things like that. But when we're talking about normal work, like when we are working with them on products and designing and trying to work on an order, they want us to order from them, work with them, and buy products from them. They actually don't want us to buy things for them and give them things for free. That's definitely something I've noticed that people may not realize, or because we often think, and it frustrates me very much when I am in communities and, I'm on the ground, and there are so many things that different organizations, government or non-government companies have just come in and be like, here's a water filter, here's a solar, thing for electricity. And it's all hodgepodge. And after a while, it's all just abandoned. And it's like these white elephants like sitting in the village. And I'm thinking, how many millions did this organization or UN agency or whoever put into this, because a lot of the times the communities are not consulted on what exactly they need and how will they use things. We just go and build things that we think they want. So I think, and I'm sure, I think a lot of Yayasan Hasanah knows this, and people know this more now, but a lot of it is still happening. So it has to be very much a participatory approach. And, and with Earth Heir, I've always felt that really it's teaching a man how to fish. So I always thought, look, if we can help these communities earn an income, they can choose however they want to spend their money, because that is the freedom that I have. I work, I earn my money, I spend it on whatever I want. My children's education or my family, if I want to buy a car, I want to improve my house. It's my choice. So in the same way, I think we need to give that choice to the people that we work with and the communities that we want to help, that they also want the dignity of having choice in how to spend their money and their time and their lives. And we cannot come in as people from the outside trying to tell them what they need and how they live their lives.
Absolutely. If I'm hearing from you correctly, really, if CSOs or SEs or anybody who wants to make an impact, if one of the investments that we can make, which is almost priceless, is the investment of time, and time to really spend with people, building relationships with them, and listening, not just from reports, but listening from personal stories themselves. Thanks, Sasi, for sharing. Would anybody else like to chime in with the communities that you've worked with? Have you observed any of the mindsets that you think have been a positive factor in creating success in your initiatives? Perhaps maybe On or Rash, would you like to kind of chime in as well on that?
I think Jacqueline was going to go for this.
Yep, go for it.
Yes. Thank you. I like to echo what Sasi said, it's important. But what is important is also that a lot of the communities that we work with used to be nomadic. And, in the 80s, 70s or 80s, they were encouraged to settle, for many reasons. Some of them are good and some of them obviously were negative. But now, we're 30, 40 years from the time that they settled. There are 2 generations already living in settled, structured communities. There is very little chance that they would like to revert back to what they were doing before. It was a very hard life for them, incredibly hard. You spend your entire life trying to survive, trying to hunt, trying to forage, and you don't have your subsistence culture, you don't have farming, so trying to fish. So by the time dust settles, you're tired, right? So that's how they lived as nomadic people. So settling allowed them to have more structure, more, culture. They will have the ability to plan festivals and, to me, I think the evolution had to happen. It's just that maybe the narrative was wrong at that time. But what we want them to have now is to allow them to live the life that they want, where they are in situ. We should not want to continue to displace them, but we also want them to have access to wealth, because wealth will buy them education, will buy them healthcare, will buy them a higher standard of living and hopefully a better quality of life. So that's what Tanoti is there to do. We love it that you live there, and we will make it work for you. So please work in situ, and you can buy your Nikes if you want.
Yeah, and it's really all about wholesome elevating the wholesome self of the livelihood of people, right? Looking at them where they belong and where they come from, and not just coming with a predisposed solution. Fantastic. We're all about talking about charity and a justice-based system. Perhaps we could kind of shift gears here and talk about what are some of the opportunities or risks for CSOs as they move towards a justice-based framework to promote greater participation among marginalized and underserved communities, perhaps maybe in policy or decision making. Opportunities or risks. Rash or On, over to you.
Raj, would you like to go first?
Ken, I'll take a quick stab at this. I'll be honest, this is a very exciting topic when you talk about justice-based frameworks and how to incorporate that within communities' decision-making. We've got some experience on that, and I'll share what we've done, what we've learned, and how we're going to go forward. So at the very beginning, right, when we started Biji-Biji, I was very strongly about equal distribution of equity, even to new people who joined at the very beginning. Now, what I learned so we have actually 10 partners at Biji-Biji, and what I learned from that is it's empowering to have that power, but not everybody wants it, and not everybody is actually looking for that. Some people find motivation through different means, right? So learning that, yes, people want to be involved in decision-making and roles and responsibilities, I think you also have to be mindful of the response, what comes with that, the burden or the stress that comes with that. So what I've learned now, like when we work with communities, is that we allow conversation to discuss how they want to be involved. We allow them to be involved in the right size and scale of decision-making, especially when it involves their specific projects, their specific communities, but then also allowing them to know that their input will be heard at the bigger tables. So for example, when we did the project with Beyond Bins, with YSD, and even with Hasanah, it really is like starting the conversation, but then allowing the community to understand that after this is your project, this is for you. So linking to your previous point also, right, Deborah, I've honestly found independent thinking or agency as the most powerful mindset for communities to thrive, right? The minute they realize that they actually are the best ones to solve their own problems and not some YB, not some other SE or NGO, it changes the whole game completely. So we really look at that. And even now with our alumni program, we are realizing that it shouldn't be us telling the students or our ex-graduates what they should learn. It should be them telling us what they want, allowing them to open their own chapters, allowing them to propose their own topics, organize their own little meetups. And then when they are ready, creating that scaffold for them to grow. I think Masala Wheels did something very interesting recently where they actually diversified their restaurant to their beneficiaries, and they're coming up with this model, which I think is brilliant as a way of going forward.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be gained just listening to what you just shared, because in coming up with solutions, and when the solutions are actually coming from the community themselves, what it does is that it really amplifies the dignity and the respect of a person, that their voices are heard. I would like to actually hear what's happening with the OA community. On, perhaps you might want to chime into the question that I posed just now, and also just to add on to another layer of that, do you think that the Orang Aslis are given enough space to have their voices heard, and in what ways can, if there is not enough space, how can we then amplify their voices?
Yeah, it's great. No, I like what Rashvin said. Let them develop their own voice and tell us what actually is effective in addressing their concerns, and that's so good. In terms of the opportunity, actually, in one sense, in a sad sense, the climate crisis is actually an opportunity arising for the Orang Asli and all indigenous people, for that matter, simply because some analysts are saying when we protect the forest, it will contribute towards 30% of reaching the Paris Agreement goals in reduction of carbon emissions. So they have a very, very powerful role. And the other thing that's beginning to emerge is studies also, international studies are showing where there are Orang Asli or indigenous people living or managing lands, the deforestation rates are 5 times slower where the indigenous people dwell. So that's amazing. If that's the case, I mean, they would be the best partners now, and using this opportunity of how do we work with them to protect the forest and our planet. And you know, one of the things that we're doing with them now is, as we talk about how do you conserve your forest, now that you have some surplus income, you've got a direction to move forward. And they are telling us, this is how we want to use our land. And they are experts. They are literally the best experts in looking after the land, managing it, and ensuring that it is conserved in a way to protect all of us and our planet at the same time. And so, one of the opportunities that we really need to leverage more and more on is to recognize that they are the leaders in nature economics. And by engaging them, hearing their voices, allowing them to, as they show us how they protect the forest, we realize, there was at one point, you protect the environment and you keep everyone out of it. And unfortunately, the indigenous people were victims of such an approach. But now we realize that they actually play an integral part, and actually the people that keep and protect the forest. Any deforestation happens, they are the line of alert. And so within them, because they are part of nature and they consider the forest as part of themselves, it's in their DNA, as I heard Koyak say in the last session, it's in their DNA to protect and conserve the forest. And so we need to untap and partner with them to develop ways of doing so. Later on, if time permits, I would share. I'm happy to share how they can build the green economy and not just protect the forest to fight climate change, but they can contribute towards a very powerful way in increasing wealth for our nation and in nation building.
Thank you so much for that insightful answer on. We would love to hear, a little bit more about that, because I think, it's a treasure box waiting to be open. I would have to shift gears a little bit and then circle back, to some of the points that all four panelists have actually brought up. But, with, as we're speaking to CSOs predominantly here, there is an expanding, every social enterprise or CSO will reach a point of wanting to scale. And among them are, just ways how you can cater towards the demands of different funders. And perhaps maybe Rash, you could, give us a bit of insight, and Jacky or Sasi as well, if you want to. Could you share with us how, you can kind of strike the right balance between profit incentive and social impact while keeping your, feet on the ground, obviously, and keeping true to the vision and the mission of your company? Rash, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. This is probably like one of my most interesting questions, right? I'll start by saying that I think it's important to recognize that both are needed. Small, deep, and beautiful impact is needed for certain type of interventions. And on the flip side, you also want to recognize some solutions or some problems should be tackled at scale. So I think both is correct. You don't want to say one is better than the other, right? Now within that, in terms of making profits to grow, it is important, I think, to recognize what are we using that for, which part of the balance we want to scale. Now, within scalability, some things scale very well, some things are not meant to be scaled. Content, you can easily scale, right? Designs, you can easily scale. I mean, they're replicatable. You can use the same content developed in one place across the country, hopefully across the region, right? You got designs, you got content, you also got technology backends that are actually very scalable. So I think in terms of SEs looking to make profit, to reinvest back into these segments is fantastic because it is the right way to scale. Scaling purely to open different branches so that your manpower increases from 10 to 50 to 100, but whilst not just for you to grow, whilst not working with local chapters, I don't think is the right way to scale, right? And within that, just to add, I think this profit motive is, I feel, important because one of the biggest challenges in the sector, right, is our ability to retain good talent. So many times I've seen like good talented people get offered 2 times by a tech company and they just have to leave. And we actually struggle to keep people after the age of 30, 35 because we can't afford those salaries. And for me, the biggest frustrating point is that why isn't, I think, I'm not saying get paid like investment banker level, right? Nothing wrong to our Khazanah friends over here, lots of love to everybody. But I also think it's about recognizing important work, paying for talent, recognizing that because we need our best brains to solve our most pressing issues. Like, surely that's a very straightforward formula, right? And yeah, I really think that has to happen. And that's why I think profit is fine within boundaries, within the right reasons.
Absolutely. We talk about fair trade, right? But then people who are doing the good work should be paid well as well. And they should be able to kind of create good careers in that path as well. So thanks so much for, putting in that nugget. And, especially for, perhaps maybe even the funders listening in on this, it would be something to chew on, right? Perhaps maybe Sasi or Jacky, would you like to share with us maybe some of the your experiences learned when it comes to balancing the demands of funders, and how do you solve the solution of scalability?
Sure. I actually saw the question that came through by Mr. J. Sharma about scalability. And I think this is a question that, we definitely get asked a lot. To give people context, I think social enterprise is this model because you're not just prioritizing profit, you're prioritizing mission and impact and purpose and making a difference in the community. So a lot of our revenue, our margins are all reinvested. And on top of that, like even on the products that we sell, our margins are less than 30%, if we get that much, right? So if you want to be able to, so our model is not like to be a H&M, or a Zara, because H&M and Zara, yes, hugely profitable, hugely scalable, but why? Because there is a cost of, creating the products. Not saying that they are unethical, but fast fashion and making products at very, very low prices and not paying people fairly for their work means you have higher profits. So, in general, our economy and the capitalist system has been built on this basis. It's about reducing costs and increasing profits massively. And that allows you to have enough funds to be able to scale quickly. So I think that social enterprises are also scalable, but it just takes us a lot longer. For us to break even, it took almost 4.5 years, as a business, before we actually started showing a profit. So, that's kind of long. Not very many businesses want to wait till 4 years to actually break even or show profit, right? So the timeline for us to achieve the same things as a normal company that is not looking at social impact, is longer. But the pandemic has shown very clearly that businesses that have social purpose in their mission and what they do are able to survive, these kind of like emergencies and pandemic situations. Because in the end, if you are not looking at social good in your business model and your supply chains, you're not looking at how you're paying your vendors, are your vendors ethical, are your materials that you're using for your products ethical, and what's happening to your products at the end of its useful life, how are you treating your employees, what's your production line like? Everything to do with how you earn money. If you are not already revisiting that and looking at how it's impacting communities, how it's impacting the planet, how it's impacting the environment, then your long-term sustainability will be at risk. So I think that it's not that social enterprises are not scalable. We are scalable, and I believe the social enterprise model is scalable, and it will happen, but it just takes a longer time. Yeah. And I think it also has to do with the fact that for us, trying to educate consumers about why it matters to think about who makes your products, and why social enterprise products tend to cost more, because we are paying the people that make the products fairly, and we are being ethical in the supply chain. So therefore, the cost of the final product will be higher than comparing it to a company that's not looking at all of that.
Absolutely. I think what you just brought up is really the patient capital, right? In all social enterprises, and the patient capital is that investment that you have with the people, the communities that you're working with, and along with the patient capital, I think there is a lot of awareness that needs to take place, both with funders as well as your target audience and whoever that you're selling your products to. Jacky, very quickly, would you have a story to tell in terms of scalability before I take some questions from the audience?
Yes, I do. Actually, we have to go back to the reason why we started this business, right? We started because we wanted to provide wealth to people who have skills and they cannot generate it for themselves. So we are intermediating. We make money and then we continue our business with the money that we make. And then it gets reinvested and then it continues. And then the business is 9 years old. The reason why we scale is because we are providing a service and people want our service, so we scale. And we have 40% of Sarawak living in rural and remote areas, which is about 1 million people. So we continue to work because we have people that we need to serve. So my intention is to be obsolete. We don't want to scale. We just want to be obsolete, because if we are obsolete, then our mission is served. Our mission is achieved, right? So no, we don't want to scale. I don't know how to say this, but we only do it because we have to. Yeah.
At the end of the day, the beneficiaries are really the communities that you're working with, if I'm hearing you correctly, Jacky. And really, you're just keeping to the heart of your mission, really. And kudos to you. Thank you so much for sharing so authentically and transparently about that. I'm going to take a question from Kevin Rohan Thomas here, and really in line with the topic that we're talking about, keeping our ears on the ground. And so he says the communities are the experts in the matters related to them. At which point do we as initiators take a step back and provide a supportive role towards the communities? And what is the best way to approach this? So this has a lot to do with legacy creation and handing over the baton as well. So perhaps maybe I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. It's actually a very good question and difficult to answer in many ways, because when working with left behind communities, they often have no confidence in their own skill sets. And oftentimes they are also not able to understand how the market operates. And I was fascinated listening to our bankers, how they articulate it so well. But many of them would never understand that. And so that's why you talk about a patient capital that needs to develop understanding skills, understanding market, pricing, their skill sets. And so at the initial stages, there will probably need to be a lot more inputs provided for them, and maybe even some initial starting point. But that initial starting point will begin to change as they gain more confidence, more skills and understanding. And at some point in that trajectory, we need to step back a lot more and more so as time goes on, until they get the supply chain dynamics all right, and that they are able to reach. The other thing that's so important is for them to reach economy of scale, because many of these groups are in isolated areas where logistics is a serious cost that eats into any margins that can be made. And so the other challenge is not just the idea, the concept, but also helping them organize themselves to an economy of scale. And when that is achieved, it's time to move on.
Good stuff. Sasi or Jacky or even Rash, would you like to chime in with an answer to that question? When do you actually let go of the hand-holding?
I mean, with our artisans, it's very much when they tell us to bugger off, really. No, sorry. It is. So we do have some artisans that have kind of said that to us already, or they've reached the point where, we have given them as much of our knowledge as possible, and we've worked with them for years, and we've trained them on design and production and how to handle large orders and all of these things. And they have built those skills, and the systems of how to do what they need to do is there. So now, I have to beg for time from them to make products for us because they're so busy. So essentially, I think that's what happens is when they are self-sufficient, they will just not need you anymore, and they're not going to be calling you up and asking you for help. And so that's when, even if you want to be involved, you have no space to be involved because they don't want you there. That's what I have seen in our experience working with artisans. So after a while, we know that, okay, this artisan is very successful. So we only work on certain things with them. And now let's focus on another community and retraining a new community that has new crafts or another type of craft that no one knows about and hasn't even been out in the market yet. So right now, we're looking at a couple of other communities that we want to go and do that with because we've never engaged with them, and they are making products that we have never sold or never worked on. So I think this is the sort of iterative process that we go through.
Jacky, I see that you're nodding to everything that Sasi is saying. Do you have a similar story to tell?
I have to learn from Sasi. I took it upon myself to build their capacity and then expose them. I think the time to let go is when they are more famous than me. I'm not very famous, but if once they're more famous than me, there's no point. So we expose them, to the market. We expose them to potential customers, and then what we did, and thank you to stakeholders, was apply grants for them on their behalf. So I'm sitting down as Jacky, and then I write their name and their contact number and everything, and then submit the grant applications on their behalf. And then, 3 months later, they get money, right? And then they don't need to contact me for a while, which is fine. They don't contact us for a while because they're sitting on this grant money, and then and now we have to do grant reporting. So we work with them through this process, and hopefully they acquire a mindset on how to access funds, how to communicate with their markets, and it's a very slow weaning process. We're not told yet to bugger off, but we're trying to infuse that idea into their heads, and then off we go. It's a 5-year plan, obsolescence.
Yeah, and if I'm hearing correctly from all of you, you can have plans, but I think you will know when you reach that point to say, hey, look, you're ready to take on and go the step further. In the interest of time, I want to just squeeze in one last question. And this is in regards to kind of partnerships and how can we make impact creation or social impact change and environmental impact change more successful in this country. So how can governments, and this question is actually from Kuhan Party, how could government and corporates continue to support systems change for the growth and the scale of impact by CSOs at grassroots level? How can we promote more partnerships amongst CSOs, governments, even corporate funders, and so forth? I'm going to direct that question first to Rash.
Oops. Yes, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Kuhan. A fantastic question. I honestly feel let's just imagine, right? What has been the stumbling block or the challenges in working with government? I personally think it has been accessibility, right? And I think second to that, accessibility, by here I mean that you can't just set up a meeting with an agency. You can't just rock up to an office and be like, hey, we're doing this in work. How can you work with us? There's always an element of knowing someone before. You need to have relationships. So I imagine if someone who's in urban based also needs to know someone to get connected. How will someone who is not in the city center, not nearby Putrajaya, right, get access to federal agencies or even your own state agencies? So one is accessibility. How can governments make their doors more open? How can we be able to have honest conversations without worrying about because nobody wants to offend or be critical, but we all want the same thing, right? We all want to solve problems and not talk about them in 10 years from today, right? We all want to say, okay, that's been done. 10 years from today, how do we do something else? So we all want that. So how do we create this element of trust between governments and CSOs that we actually all want the same thing? And I think really at a data sharing level will be also very exciting if we could find a way. I understand the importance of protecting data, right, that government has access to, but I think if it could be aggregated and it could really help the impact work that we do, it will save us the time and really allow us to, with surgical precision, know where our work should be targeted towards.
Absolutely, it's so important that data sharing be seamless as well as just kind of easy to access, right? And I'm hearing from you that CSOs are really in need of data that will help them make informed decisions. I would like to ask On if you can just quickly just chime in on this with your work with the OA communities. How can corporates and the government help you to kind of strengthen the work with the Orang Asli communities?
Yes, thank you, Deborah. It's critical. I mean, we cannot do this work alone, and neither can government do it alone. It needs a whole nation approach. So this partnership is the only way to deal with very stubborn left behind groups. I think for the Orang Asli, my experience is the state often has not fully appreciated the expertise of the Orang Asli in forest management, and that they are leaders in not just in forest management, but leaders in nature economics. For example, with our projects, some of them are able to earn 2,000, and we're aiming for them to be able to earn 3,000 with the inclusion of other livelihood strategies. But imagine you multiply that of 100 farmers in 100 communities, you got millions of GDP that are being generated. So it's actually a very powerful a green economy that the Orang Asli can provide for. In fact, in this some of the World Bank and Swiss Institute study of last year, it showed that nature economics or nature contributes towards 55% of the global GDP. That's huge. And so we need to untap that potential, and that can only be done when there is a partnership with the state and private sector and among the Orang Asli themselves. Oftentimes the state gives the reason that they cannot, they need the logging concessions to meet their operational expenses, but they have underestimated the potential of these indigenous communities to generate that income and even more to support the state budgets. And so what we need to do is, and one thing that the federal government has done, it's called, they set up a trust fund called the EFT, the Economic Fiscal Transfer, where it provides certain funds to the state government to protect the forest. Now, what I'm hoping we can go further is that increase that EFT to then incentivize the state to protect the rights and land of the Orang Asli and bring them in as co-managers to manage the forest and bring in the support to develop the infrastructure to build a green economy. It could be agroforestry, it could be handicraft, it could be ecotourism, it could be farming, natural farming, fruit trees, so many things that are green in nature, and build an economy that is very significant for our people and our nation, and at the same time protect the environment. So huge ability of us to go forward. If only we can tap and learn how to engage them and bring them on as meaningful and equal partners in wealth creation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Equal partners. It's such a loaded word, right? When we think about coming in with solutions, and the solutions don't come from us, but from the communities themselves. Thank you so much for being that voice for the OA community. In the interest of time, I'm just going to open the floor if any of the four panelists would have any final words to say about about the communities that you're working with and about the good work that you're doing, if there is any, before I kind of wrap this session off.
Then are you prepared to wait for another hour, Deborah?
You're all. I think you've just given, all of you have just given so much stories. We can go on in this conversation, but I think maybe I just really want to thank you so much for an engaging and inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for sharing authentically and also just very transparently about maybe the challenges and the struggles that you face as well. That this journey is not a bed of roses, and it's also a very worthwhile journey to be taking on. One of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from this session is really that we are working with the communities and not just for the communities, and coming hand in hand with them, walking hand in hand with them is so important. So simply coming into a community, with external experts and solutions in tow, it's not enough, and in fact it's not the right way to go, but that we need to really keep our ears on the ground and to really listen to what the needs are. And more importantly, I think people are at the heart of the issue here, and to see people really as people and not just problems to be solved, because I think everyone deserves the respect and dignity as we all want it. So thank you all so much again for your time, and for those of you who are listening, I hope you have gained so much from this session. I've been taking down a lot of notes and for my journey as well in sustainable development and charting the way forward. Thank you so much, all four of you, and thank you so much for listening.